As I pointed out in another video that was focused only on goji berries, in my goji berry cuttings, I mentioned that all of the cuttings were about the size of a toothpick, and none of this green growth was there. That's all new growth. But in addition to the new growth, this one that looks dead has roots running here. This one has significant roots coming down. And that's the majority of the roots that I can see. Because the roots are not fully established yet, I don't think I want to take this out of the cup. But as you see, that is significant root growth right there. Did I hear a challenge? I heard somebody challenge. Well, what the heck? What the heck? Let's go ahead and take a look at these roots. I can always grow some more of these goji berry cuttings. Okay? So let's see what's going on in here. Alright. So as you see, I dumped them. This stick has roots growing. You see those roots? Those are roots. These are roots on this goji berry cutting. This one has roots growing. They're not big, but they're there. It's rooting. Let's see this one. This one's got significant roots. Okay? You see that? Significant root growth. Let's see here. Also, significant root growth on these goji berry cuttings. This one probably just needs more time, and you might see some roots that I don't see in the video. Sometimes the video picks up things that are hard to see with the naked eye, right? But out of this set of 5 goji berry cuttings, 4 of them definitely have roots, and the 5th one may have roots. And what we did, all we did, was we used a clear solo cup and a blue solo cup. And solo cup obviously is a brand name. It's a plastic cup. We cut little drainage holes inside of the clear cup, used 100% cocoa coir. And in the blue cup, we have a reservoir of water so that it is a self-watering system. Our plastic bag acted as a greenhouse. I'm going to go ahead and pot up one of these goji berry cuttings. Okay, so what I did is I reused one of these small little vegetable start pots, and this one has the most significant root system going, so I'm going to go ahead and stick it in this pot. Try not to damage the roots, and using cocoa coir, same as what was in there before, 100% cocoa coir. You can use peat moss as well. I'm not yet going to use a potting medium because the roots, they're not enough roots. I want to get the roots to fill up this container before I put it in any type of a potting medium. Okay, so there we go with a goji berry start. I'm going to do the same for this one because it has a pretty significant root system as well. I'm going to go ahead I'm halfway filling it, then I'm digging out a little reservoir for the roots to not be too disturbed, and I'm just backfilling it around the roots with coco coir. In these small pots, this should be sturdy enough. Now I could have gone on ahead and just used more cups, but I like the square bottoms of these pots. They're less likely to tip over because I'm going to go ahead and put those goji berries and those goji berry starts outside. As for the other three that barely have anything going for them, they got a little bit of root started, I'm just going to pop them right back up in here. Okay, put some coco coir in the bottom. This one has some root growing on it. Put it toward the edge, not all the way on the edge. This one has some roots growing on it. And these roots for the goji berry plant, they're kind of translucent. You can see through them a little bit. They're kind of a white beige color. This one, oh yeah, that's a root right there. So all five of these, that's 100%. 100% of these goji berry cuttings rooted successfully in 100% coco coir. Okay? So I'm just repotting it, these cuttings. Hopefully I didn't disturb the roots too much. I don't think I did. Next we're going to go ahead and put the greenhouse back over the goji berry cuttings. And one thing that I did that you can probably see is during the middle of the winter, when these started growing green, or maybe the first part of the spring, I went on and opened up the top of the bag. The reason I opened up the top of the bag is so that there could be a little more ventilation, but also to help harden off these starts so they weren't completely in a humid environment. They're getting some of the dryness of the air that's in the house. Another thing to mention, and I'll label these later. I know these are goji berries, so before I move them outside, I'll put labels on them. But another thing to mention is during the winter, a lot of the cuttings were doing really well during the coldest part of the winter. And that's because the heat is on in the house. But I'm in Texas, and it doesn't stay cold all winter. And especially toward the end of the winter, it starts getting 70 and 80 degrees. It'll drop back down to freezing 2 days later, but you start actually turning off the heat, and you might even have to turn on the AC. And now that we're in the end of March going into April, the AC is on. It's not on all day, but the AC is on. The heat's not on. The heat's not coming back on until November sometime. So it's going to be AC or nothing from here until then. But what happens is once you turn on the AC, even though it's warmer outside, depending on where you are in the house, if they're getting directly blown on by that AC, that actually chills them a little bit too much. So the ones that were under the heat during the coldest part of winter were doing great. Then when you turn on the AC, they start struggling a little bit. And that's what happened to this nectarine cutting. Do you see how the leaves fell off? I haven't shared this set with you yet, but this nectarine cutting is from a sunburst nectarine in my yard. It's a low chill nectarine, and all of those leaves were new growth leaves. They weren't on there when I potted up these cuttings in my miniature greenhouse setup. But I wanted to show you, we have some roots coming out of the bottom of the cup. So, and these are from February 4th. So let's see what is going on with these nectarine cuttings. Can we see what's going on? Can we see where the roots are? Okay, so what we have are some really fine roots on this particular cutting. That thing right there, that's a root. It's attached. This is a root there, here, here. So this nectarine cutting has rooted. This nectarine cutting has rooted, and it even has a long root coming out of the bottom. Now there's something going on, but here's another thick root right here. One thick root, another thick root, and a bunch of little, well, that's not a root, but a bunch of little hairy roots going on. But you got two really good roots on that particular cutting. But as you see here, the leaf wilted. This is one that was near where the AC blows. So when the heat was blowing, it was doing really well. But then once the AC kicked in, it actually was too cold in that area. But still, there are roots, and these are viable cuttings. Let's look at this one. There's some roots going on up in this section. This little cluster, and I hope you can see it in the camera, but this little cluster right here, there's roots in this cluster. Very small roots. Okay? Let's see what's going on up here. Once again, we have fine roots here. These little fine roots. Hopefully you can see them. But this has fine roots. And that's a little thicker root trying to happen. So all of these are alive. What I'm going to do is, I think that this one was probably getting overwatered in addition to the air conditioning. So I am going to refresh the soil. with some drier coco coir. Because these roots are so fine, what I'm going to do is I'm going to leave these for a little while longer. Okay? And since the roots are already there, we're going to repot it at the same level. Okay, so previously we filled up the dirt and then we poked holes. But since there are roots there, we don't want to disturb the roots. So we're just going to fill the bottom up and set these cuttings on top of the planting medium. Okay. Yeah, they're full of roots. But they're not ready. They are not ready. These guys, I'm sure, will be ready by May to be repotted. Give it 4 to 6 more weeks to make sure they're ready to be repotted. And another alternative would be just to let them stay in here until they go dormant in the fall and then repot them. What would happen at that time is this thing would be just totally full of roots if we waited that long, and we'd have to separate the roots. But we can cross that bridge when we get to it. Let's see how they grow before and up until then. And also with this nectarines, I did the same thing by opening up the top of them, but they were just getting too much change in temperature with the AC. So if they were in an actual greenhouse where the temperature is controlled at a constant, more or less constant level, that wouldn't have happened. Or if you have a growing bench with grow lights in your garage and you set this there, that wouldn't happen because most garages don't have heat and AC. Additionally, another way to take cuttings from stone fruits is you take the cuttings in the fall or in the winter and you put them in a Ziploc bag and you refrigerate them until the spring when you plant them. Another story that we want to tell is a follow-up to my Pakistan mulberry tree cuttings. This one was the red Pakistan mulberry tree. And I have a surprise for you. Look at these roots busting out of here. This guy's like, yeah, we ready to go. This group of cuttings was taken from my red Pakistan mulberry tree on January 8th of 2022. So I would say this is success with the red Pakistan mulberry cutting. Look at that. We have roots that are growing out through the bottom of our container. I would have to say this was a success. success with our red Pakistan mulberry tree cuttings. Okay. And even looking through the cup, we can see roots are coming down from this guy right here. But who else are the roots coming from? Well, let's take a look. Oh, well, as we see, the majority of the roots are coming from this one. And those are some pretty healthy looking roots. I don't want this guy to get waterlogged, so we are going to go ahead and plant it up in one of our recycled pots, because these recycled pots have excellent drainage. Excellent drainage. Okay. So we're just going to pack it down at the bottom. We see the level of our roots ball. We're going to pack it a little bit more at the bottom. We see the level of our root ball. You see that root right there? And then there's another root right there. That's our highest root. So we want our highest root to be down below the new soil level, which it is. Okay. And again, we're using 100% coco coir. You might use sphagnum moss, or you might use peat. But the reason for this is because these roots, while they're significant, they're not established. So we want the roots to get established and totally get root bound in this pot before transplanting it to a bigger pot. And without question, this will be ready to go into a big pot at the end of the summer, or if not sooner. So that's a red Pakistan mulberry cutting. Let's see our others. This one, the top died out, and I don't really see any roots on it, any viable roots, but we're going to examine it and see if there's something hidden. I don't see any viable roots. Here's another. I think that's a root. Is that a root? Is there another one in here? You know what? And one potential mistake that we made with this set is this is not 100% coco coir. This is a mix. Now there is a root here. This root likely broke off of one of these guys. But we're not that desperate for the Pakistan mulberry cuttings because we have more. Okay. We've got Pakistan mulberry trees. So for this group, this was the group B. If you recall, group B was a group that I had started in water, and then I moved them from water into my Soul Cup greenhouse. I did that because they didn't look like they were doing anything in the water. So I also have group A of the Pakistan mulberries. These are the group A Pakistan mulberry cuttings. I'm not going to disturb these because they're already in a pot. But as you see, this one's growing. So we can just say that this one is like this one. And I'm going to move it outside. so it can get natural sunlight and water and rainwater. These are going to be outside and they're hardened off. The same thing with that bag is we open the top of the bag on these to help them harden off. And on this one, the bag's been totally removed. And I'm going to just take this one out. Oh gosh. The reason I just took this one out is to show you that there is this fungus that's growing on it. When I scratch it, it's green, which means it's still alive, but it has that fungus. And as I was pulling it up, I could feel little baby roots ripping off. So I probably shouldn't have pulled it up like that. But I'm going to plant this one. Like I said, I scratched it right here, and there's green. It means it's still a live cutting. The cutting is still alive. And the cutting's still alive because it had roots that I just pulled up. But I'm going to stick this in another pot by itself because I don't want that fungus to spread to anything else. And mulberries in particular, in humid areas, all types of mulberries are susceptible, but particularly everbearing mulberries and red Pakistan mulberries are susceptible to mold. A certain fungus creates mold, and some type of shelf mushroom grows on the bark. I've seen it happen, which is how I know it happens. That's from experience. The next one. This is an Arctic frost satsuma. And I don't have the date of the cutting, but this cutting was taken before any of the other cuttings that we're discussing. This was taken probably in October of 2021. And this work area is getting a little messy. But I want to show you the success with the citrus cutting. Okay, so down here is where we have our roots. Does everybody see that? We got roots on our Arctic frost satsuma, which means I'm going to repot it in one of these pots. And since it has roots, I'm going to harden it off. And we are going to let it outside. Okay. I'm just smelling the soil. You know, sometimes you can smell things in the soil. This particular soil was a potting mix. This was not coco coir. This was potting mix with added additional perlite. So what we're doing, the new mix is a combination of coco coir and potting mix. Okay. And we're putting it in the starter pot to the same level as it was. And we have success with our satsuma cutting. This is an Arctic frost satsuma cutting. Okay. And this is for my own personal use in my yard. Okay. Next we have another cutting that I didn't really discuss with you guys very much. This is a Jacaranda mimosiflora, which is a blue Brazilian mimosa. You know, I don't really see the roots through the cup. There's foliar growth, but I'm not seeing any roots coming through this cup. Actually, I do see some roots down there. But I'm not going to mess with this one just yet, okay? Did I hear a challenge? This Jacaranda mimosiflora was taken on January 18th of 2022. And by your request, you guys want to see what these roots look like. So I'm going to go ahead. And once again, I had ventilated my greenhouse grow bag. And this is in 100% coco coir. And so as far as the roots go, these are the roots. You see them? It's actually not that many roots compared to the amount of substrate. So there's not that much in the way of roots, but it does have roots. See that? So I can tell you that with every type of plant, every category of plant that I have taken cuttings and grown in my miniature greenhouse, for every category, I have had success. For some plants, it's 100% success. For others, it's less than 100%. But considering there's no type of plant that I've done this with that was not successful. Every type was successful. I like that. Did we lose something? Let's go ahead and pot that up. You know, I think this was a root. Yeah, that was a root. That was a string of roots that came off of this when it fell out. I will keep you updated if it survives or not. But that was a string of roots that came off of it. Okay. I do have the mother plant still. And this was just to show you guys success. Here's another root. So be careful when you unpot these, because here's a ball of roots right here. It's possible to damage them when you unpot them. What you really want to see is a lot of roots running through here before you take them out. So this was, I believe, since January. Yeah, from January to almost April, or from mid-January to the end of March. And that's the whole purpose of the solo cut method anyways, is so that you can see, yeah, that's a nice root that broke off. You see how it's translucent? I was telling you those roots are like that whitish beige color. But we learn from our mistakes, don't we? I do. Now this soil is not something that you would throw away. This soil can absolutely be reused. I will just refreshen it and mix it in with some fresh potting soil and use it on some of my other plants. I don't want to use it on starts like this because I prefer to use the coco coir on starts. But on other plants, I could use this in my vegetable garden. I could use this for some other trees that I have. But you can refresh this. This actually would be great for tomatoes, which I'm going to be doing a video on tomatoes coming up pretty soon. Tomatoes, eggplants, things of that nature. This would be a really good medium, because as you saw, this is now it's coco coir mixed with potting soil, mixed with extra perlite and organic materials like this little baby root. All those things together make for a great potting mix. But in order to really refresh in the mix, I'm going to add additional potting mix to that, so that it will be fresh, and I'll add amendments and such things, and I'll use it in another pot. Well, I certainly had an awesome time gardening with you today. I hope you find something awesome to do in your garden. Until next time, happy, healthy gardening to you. Bye now.